Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Amirul Hafizi bin Mohamed Nordin, and my metric number is 2019252792, and I am getting supervised by Prof. Madya Dr. Shujina Abdul Rahman. I'm from class of CS2595B, and today I'm going to present about my proposal. The project title is the word recognition in capture image for the blind, and the project area is the convolutional neural networks. So this is the presentation outline, which is the first one is introduction, include with the research background, problem statement, research questions, research objective, research scope, research significance. And the second one is the literature review, which is I review the literature. So it has the literature review table and the related work. And the third one is the research methodology. So inside the research methodology have the research procedure and the proposed technique. And the fourth one is the Gantt chart, and the fifth one is the conclusion. So we go to the next slide. So my target users is the people who has a visual impairment or blind. So this disability of not having to see is one of the hardest thing to face in our life. So the majority of this information that to the blind and visually impaired, limiting their independence because access knowledge represent autonomy. So the blind and visual impaired still facing a lot of difficulties to perform basic daily tasks, including reading the article or any papers. Okay, so the problem statement of this proposal is it contains of the people who are blind and visually impaired find it hard to read any type of book. Some of them most likely want the opportunities to read specific books, but they can't due to a vision loss. Okay, so right now I'm going to talk about the research questions and objective. So there is 3 questions here. The project want to answer this question, which is what is an appropriate convolutional neural network architecture for the word detection dataset? And the second one is how to construct a convolutional neural network model to learn from a word recognition dataset. And the third one is how to develop a system for those who are blind or visually challenged. So we go to the next slide. Okay, right now I'm going to talk about the research objective. So the objective of this project are to create an appropriate convolutional neural network architecture for the word detection dataset. And the second one is to construct a convolutional neural network model to learn from a word recognition dataset. And the third one is to develop a word recognition system and a system that can automatically read text aloud for those who are blind or visually impaired. Okay, right now we're going to talk about the scope of the research. So the research scope is the focus on the developing a system that process image of a word detection of any books or article that currently acquired by a blind or visually impaired person. So the input is the image of the books, and the output is the audio feedback. So that means the audio will comes out from the system when they scan the articles or books. Okay, right now we're going to talk about the research significance. So it addresses the important problem on the struggle of the blind and visually impaired face, including when reading a specific book or article. The finding of this study is to help the blind, to help the people that is blind and visually impaired to have the opportunity to know the context of any books or articles that they want to know. We're also going to provide a student that automatically can read aloud the text. And the other significant is assist the society in realizing that people who are blind or visually impaired can live independently. Okay, right now I'm going to talk about the literature review that I find. Okay, the first literature review is by Heather Tyler 2008. So the purpose of the paper is to examine the representation of the blind people from 19th century Europe and America and consider how evolving the sensory hierarchies shape how blindness was represented at the time. So the aspect of the paper is the domain, and the techniques that being used is the data analyzing, and the result is to promote the work of the organization dedicated to the education and training of the people, and highlights the complex and the contradictory objective that influence image of the blind person reading by touch. And the second literature review is by Tim Min Pong Tran Pong Zan Po to 2020. The purpose of the paper is to study about how blind people learner acquire language. So this is the domain, and the technique is the interviews, and the result is struggle to perform day-to-day tasks. And the third one is Priya M. Matthews 2008, and the purpose of the paper is the type of blindness, and the aspect of the paper is the domain, and the technique that they use is data analyzing, and the parameters is the blind people and type of blind, and the result is the corneal blindness is the most common blindness. Okay, and the fourth one is by Piki Nali Alfonso Diniz and Katz 2004, and the purpose of the paper is the challenges of visual impaired people, and the aspect of the paper is the domain, and the technique is data analyzing, and the parameter is the impaired people, also the sighted people like us, and the buildings. So we're going to the next slide. So the other literature review is the Wat Hanasak Jem Wat Tanachai and Mike Wall and Gary Wills 2019. The purpose of the paper is difficulty of blind people on moving around, and the aspect of the paper is the domain. The findings the findings is the technique that being used is data analyzing. The result is visually impaired people have a lot of difficulty moving around within buildings and public venues. Okay, so next is by Xin Kui Pencheng An, Junhu Tin Han, Matthias Rauterberg. So the purpose of the paper is face-to-face conversation. The aspect of the paper is the domain. The findings is the sighted and visually impaired person. The result is the visually impaired people may find it difficult to participate in or follow up the discussion due to their limited ability to perceive the communicate social signal. So the seventh one, the next literature review is about it is written by Kim Chang Xiang. The purpose of the paper is the text simplification. So this is the techniques. So the techniques that being used is an experimental method. So the result is to build a model that learn from example and then use the knowledge to classify any target text in given sentence as a complex or non-complex. So the next literature review is by Sigun Taufik Arohan, Daniel Alejandro, Perez Alvarez, Jason Angel, Alexander Gilbo. So the purpose of the paper is the neural networks. So the aspect of the paper is the techniques. Finding is comparing two approaches on is based on the extensive features engineering and tree assemble classifier, and the other based on deep neural network and word embedding representation. So the next one is by Shuhan Yuan, Xiaobun Yanjian, 2017. Purpose of the paper is convolutional neural network, and the aspect of the paper is the techniques. So the finding is method for calculating a hidden score vector that can quantify the importance or relevance of words to a given task. So the next literature review is Chun Min Kwan 2008 by Chun Min Kwan on 2018. So the purpose of the paper is artificial neural network. The aspect of the paper is the techniques, and the finding is explain how artificial neural networks works. So the 11th and the 12th one is the purpose of the paper is the convolutional neural network, and what the finding is what is convolutional neural network and how convolutional neural network works. So, and the 13th one is by MD Mojibur Rahman Radio Akanda, and the purpose of the paper is a voice assist control for the blind. So the aspect of the paper is the techniques. The finding is deliver voice command to the proposed system. And the next one is by Suransi Senjam Alan Foster. The purpose of the paper is to learn about the awareness and use of assistive technology among pupils at his school for the blind, and the technique and the aspect of the paper is the technique, and the finding is that the technique that being used is an experimental method, and a cross-sectional study was undertaken with 250 pupils from 10 blind schools in Delhi who were chosen at random. Students were also questioned on their awareness. Okay, right now I'm going to talk about the related work in literature review. So the references is by Ni Matul Lailia, Iswa Uni, Alice Poetry Lintang Sari, 2020. The technique is spelling errors made by blind children while learning English using the NEFR, National Foundation for Educational Classification. So the advantage is high accuracy and low runtime. The disadvantage is using separate device. So the next one is by Dragan Ahmed Tovik, and the technique is by touchscreen exploitation, and vocal feedback might help the blind person access visual artwork. The advantages is the high accuracy and low runtime. The disadvantages is using separate device. The next one is by Mohamed Marufu Rahman, MD Milon Islam, and Shihir Ahmed. The technique is create a low-cost instrument that can assist visual impaired person. The advantage is can use on smartphone, and the disadvantage is low accuracy. The next one is by Sinrui Yui Guanjin Yan, Scott Jones, and Jafar Sani. The technique is RGBD sensor. The advantage is latest architecture, and the disadvantage is it takes time. So this is the research procedure. So the objective is to identify the exact method to detect the word for the blind using CNN. So this is the primary study and knowledge acquisition. The deliverable is problem statement, main objective, and scope. Okay, and this is the second phase, which is performing an analysis by constructing an algorithm word recognition for the blind. So the phase is design. So this design a use case diagram, design a sequence diagram, design the system architecture, and the flowchart, also the user interface. So the outcome is the flowchart, user interface, and system architecture. Okay, this is the fourth phase and the fifth phase, which is to evaluate the rightfulness of the algorithm word recognition for the blind. The system testing is testing the system and the accuracy and the performance of the system. And then we I do the documentation, report the writing, and then the final year report. Okay, this is the review of phase 1, which is identify the exact method, review literature, determine the background, segment, objective, scope, and significance. And the phase 2 is knowledge acquisition, which is also the objective one, identify the exact method, review on literature, knowledge Roman dictionary, how blind and visual impact people recognize book or article, and reason for developing of the system. And the next one is the design performing an analysis by constructing an algorithm word for the blind. This is the same things, which is design the use case diagram, the flowchart, the user interface, and architecture. And the next phase is the testing, which is the testing the system and analyze the system, also evaluate the system. Okay, the last phase is the system validation, which is validate the system and the accuracy report. Okay, so the conclusion is I anticipate that all phase will be run smoothly. After all of the research phase have been completed, I expect the system to be ready use. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.